An Exclusive Morning by Atef Abu Saif. Who would knock at the door like this on a Friday morning? The persistent knocking was disturbing his peaceful sleep. He decided to ignore it for a while longer. Eventually, reluctantly, he opened his eyes and dragged himself, heavy-footed, towards the thin brown metal door, swearing to himself as he went about his neighbour's passion for picking arguments. His son Salim, who was not yet 10 years old, had been out playing with the other children in the alley since first thing in the morning. Layla had gone off early too, paying a visit to her maternal aunt who was ill. Darwish was all by himself, and he was savouring the tranquillity of his only day off all week. A man in his late 20s and 2 young women, one of them with a television camera, were standing at the front door. Darwish rubbed his eyes before answering the young man's "Good morning." All the neighbourhood children had gathered round, ready to watch the big event. People were saying to each other, "The media want him." Darwish laughed to himself as the lad explained, with brevity and clarity, the reason for this momentous visit. He said that the 2 young Italian women standing beside him were making a film about global catastrophes and crises. Apparently, whilst looking through the news archives about the situation in Palestine, they'd got very drawn into some footage showing a man at the funeral of a child who'd been killed in some incident in Gaza. The man in the film clip was standing by the child's body, copious tears streaming magnificently from his eyes. That man was Darwish. The young man had said that it had taken the Italians 3 months to work out exactly who he was and to trace him, and that what they really wanted to do was to create that exact moment they'd seen on film in the archive. By this time, they were all sitting inside in the little room which he received guests in during the day and which Salim slept in at night. Layla had hurried home, propelled along by the major breaking news being spread from mouth to mouth that the media were at her house. Salim was turning the neighbours' kids away from the door with pride and conceit. The media were after his dad, and they were going to be on the evening news on telly. How envious the other children were. After a moment's silence, Darwish said, "So, you want me to act then?" The young man responded that the film they were making was very important, that a great many world-famous celebrities would be appearing in it, talking about their reactions to the various catastrophes the world was in the throes of, and that it was essential for Darwish to be in it too, and that, who knows, maybe you'll be famous after this, as he added, passing the tea Layla had brought them to the 2 women, who nodded their heads in agreement with every word he said without understanding a thing. The camerawoman said that the footage of Darwish crying at the funeral had made her cry, how molto sad it was, and the young man translated everything she said into Arabic. It was tempting, but as Darwish told them, they could surely use the original, real footage that was available from the news agencies. This time, the young man just turned his head away in disapproval without even asking the women's opinion. He meant he was after a piece of real footage. "What do you mean, real footage? You want me to act and you call that real footage?" Footage that's exclusive to our film." This time it was Layla who said, "So he'd be an actor then, yeah?" Then the young man said there'd be money in it for Darwish. €1,000. And the whole thing won't take more than half an hour. We'll go to a funeral in an hour or so of any kid who's been killed, and you'll walk in the procession. You'll cry, of course, and that'll be that done. It's a perfectly natural thing to do. €1,000. €1,000, all yours, answered the lad enticingly. Darwish took a drag on the cigarette he'd just lit, then said to him, "But how do you expect me to cry at the next funeral?" Without any hesitation at all, the young man answered, "Just like you cried the first time." "But that was the funeral of my neighbour's child. We brought him up together. He was like a son to me." "Every child is your child. True, but the main thing is for the film to be in our interests, for the Palestinian cause. And he winked, trying to touch both an emotional and a nationalist nerve in Darwish. But why don't you film the mother or father of the next child as a funeral for? The camerawoman seemed to have understood that Darwish was refusing to take part, so she interjected in Italian. What's important is that I want the world to see how much pain and sadness there is here, and you have a real talent for getting that pain across to the audience. It's not just anyone that can do that. No sooner had the lad finished relaying what she'd said than Darwish exploded in rage, shouting, "This pain you're talking about is an individual's real grief. It can't be acted or repeated. Pain is something personal. How do you expect me to act it?" Don't complicate things. It's much simpler than you imagine. Well, if it's that simple, go and find someone else. As the television crew were going out of the door, back onto the street, Darwish's son was saying to his friend, "My dad's going to be on telly today and your dad's not, because my dad's better than yours." And so the children began to fight, as usual.